Hello fellow egoists! Today we'll be looking at how Isagi may get the Predator Eye in the Uber's match and how he could use that weapon along with an improved direct shot. Before all that though, we have to look at the duality between his right and left eye in the Uber's match. You may have noticed it, but Isagi's right eye and left eye are shown in different ways throughout the match, and it actually goes even deeper than this match. To see what I mean, let's analyze it directly, by first looking at the way Isagi's right eye is highlighted. As far back as chapter 208, when Isagi is thinking on how to gain a 100% scoring formula against Kaiser, with this time the right eye being the highlight. After that, when Isagi eventually does score in chapter 212, we get once again the right eye being the highlight. And finally, in chapter 213, we even have Haiku saying that Isagi has gotten himself a crazy new weapon with the right eye finally being the highlight. Though those aren't the biggest examples, and it's more so a sort of side dish. And it's in chapter 221 that we truly see how important this may be. While thinking about how he has infiltrated Kaiser's mind, Isagi has his left eye on fire with the right eye being hidden by a puzzle piece. And what happens later on in the chapter when Isagi is thinking about scoring, his right eye appears with a spiral eye design, meanwhile the left eye is there with the metavision design. So here we do see that this focus on the right eye being related to scoring seems to not just be for show. Though as said before, there is a duality with the left eye, so let's talk about it. While the right eye seems to be related to scoring, the left eye seems to be about metavision and how Isagi plays related to other people. Most of the times when Isagi will be using metavision or generally analyzing the field, his left eye will be highlighted. Most notably when thinking about how to materialize his ideas on the field, with the right eye being hidden, and similarly when asking for Raichi to die for the sake of Isagi's tactics. While those aren't all of the examples, I hope I managed to show that there is indeed a sort of duality between both eyes, though this doesn't apply for Isagi only. If we look deeper, we can see that for example Barrow or Rin's right eye were highlighted when they were using Predator eyes, through their own capabilities. But when trying to play around the others, such as Barrow thinking of using Snuffy or Rin using Metavision, in the U20 match their left eye is highlighted. In general, it seems that whenever a character is fully immersing themselves in their own capabilities related to their main purpose as a player, their right eye is highlighted. So for strikers like Rin, Barrow and others, when they're using weapons to try and score, their right eye is usually highlighted. Meanwhile, for characters like Hiyori or Sai, whose purpose is to make the last pass, their right eye is highlighted when it's related to said pass. Meanwhile, the left eye seems to be highlighted when a player is using their capabilities but related to other people. So for Metavision users, the left eye will be the one highlighted. So now that we've established all that, we can go back to our original point. Is the right eye of Isagi really related to the Predator eye? For that, we'll first have to go with one of the strongest arguments, the way Isagi devoured the vision of others. To understand what I mean by that, let's look at chapter 181 and how Isagi devoured metavision from Kaiser. Isagi understood that even if he got the ball, he wouldn't be able to get a goal, and so decided to analyze Kaiser's thought pattern from behind, and what happened when he understood it? He entered flow with his left eye being the highlight. The second example is when Isagi devoured Snuffy's job philosophy in chapter 223. Where the same thing happened. Isagi understood that he couldn't stop Snuffy fully with his current self, and so decided to analyze Snuffy from afar to understand his place fully. With this, he came to a realization and entered flow once again, with the left eye being the highlight, devouring Snuffy's job philosophy by giving Raichi a quote-unquote simple job. And finally, we get to our point for the right eye, where after getting blocked by Nico in chapter 218, Isagi analyzed more deeply metavision, but specifically Predator eyes, and so entered flow with this time the right eye being the highlight, as he realized how vast the ways of inputting and using information are. The formula for this example was the same as the last two we showed right before, and so we can expect Isagi to devour the Predator eye the same way he did for the two abilities we showed right before. But this example also gives us a great segue into our next argument. The fact that Isagi entered flow tells us that from this way of inputting information, Isagi had a challenge that fits his capabilities, but also a protagonist feeling that overlapped with his ego to be able to enter flow. It's a bit complicated, but basically, to get back to Isagi's point on how to enter flow, a person needs a challenge that overlaps with their protagonist feeling. They need to feel as though they are a protagonist. But for that, the challenge needs to be fitted around their original ego. So Isagi's challenge of inputting information in various ways was a challenge that overlapped with this ego. But what is Isagi's ego exactly? It's to be a god on the field that sees absolutely everything on it, devouring all the information on the field and becoming one with it. I've made a long video analyzing this subject, so if you're interested in it, I recommend watching it. But to get back to the subject, we see that the Predator Eye is a weapon that fits with Isagi's ego of seeing absolutely everything in the field. It would reinforce Isagi's ego in that sense. Though there's also another character with a similar ego to Isagi and who has the Predator Eyes, God's chosen Emperor Mikaele Kaiser. As the story goes on, we're seeing more and more how similar Kaiser and Isagi are. Narratively, we see that Kaiser surpassed Isagi's ideal before he got Metavision, and that Kaiser is a rival that Isagi has used as a sort of model to create his own image of the best player in the world. From the way Kaiser seemed to embrace Isagi's ideal playstyle if not surpass it, and how in behavior they seem to be both sides of the same coin, as Yukimiya says, they truly are cut from the same cloth. Though those similarities don't stop at just their playstyles and behavior, but also weapons, as Kaiser does tend to use his Kaiser Impact in a direct shot type of way, and that they tend to use Metavision the same way and so reach the same points. So Isagi gaining the Predator Eye would once again be a showing of how similar they are. Now that we've seen narratively how compatible Isagi and the Predator Eye are, we can ask ourselves, is it really needed? And to that, I answer yes. It would fix the current biggest mistake of Isagi as a striker, or rather his weakness. Well, what do I mean by that? It's the fact that Isagi doesn't know what to do when he isn't in a pure 1v1 with the goalie. It's one of the biggest problems Isagi has, and it's something that he's always aiming to do. Most of, if not all of Isagi's plays were always based on him getting into a 1v1 with the goalkeeper. But the problem is that at a higher level, this won't be something he will be able to reliably do, as we're seeing so far. His answer to that was to learn to use direct shots with his left leg, which did fix the problem to a certain extent, but as we saw, when Aiku came to stop Isagi from the front, this wasn't enough. Whenever Isagi gets into a 1v1 with someone in front of him, he has trouble finding a new shot course. And while he keeps his cool, he lacks the capability to think outside of his current shooting style, which is direct shots with a straight trajectory. Predator Eyes would help Isagi fix that exact weakness and help him find new shot courses even when he gets blocked by someone. The best example of that is in his failed goal attempt in the Manshine game, where even while Kaiser was blocking most of his shot courses, Isagi still had the presence of mind to shoot through Kaiser's legs. Though let's dig a bit deeper. Can the Predator Eye and direct shots really be used together? For that we first have to define clearly what is the Predator Eye. The first time we're introduced to it, it's by Snuffy, who explains to us that a goal hunter doesn't always shoot when he wants, but rather when he sees a weakness in the goalkeeper's awareness. To that end, we can say that the Predator Eye is a shooting ability related to focusing on the goalkeeper and to wait for a weakness from them, but Barrow's second goal shows us another important thing. You don't always wait for a weakness, you can also create it. This is where Gagamaru's comment to Barrow's shot is important. No way, I didn't expect that. This right here is the essence of the Predator Eye. By using Isagi's explanation of the Predator Eye made in chapter 218, we can conjecture this. The Predator Eye is a shooting ability related to reducing the goalkeeper's reaction time by creating a weakness in their awareness of the potential shot courses and using said weaknesses to reduce their reaction time. So this can be used in multiple ways. Through blind spots, the way Ubers did before Barrow broke free, and generally the way they have done most of the match, or by using impossible to predict shot courses the way Kaiser and Barrow have done in their most recent goals. Though there are many more ways of doing it, and I'm hyped to see how the offer will show us that. To that end, we can raise one question. We have seen that it makes narrative sense for Isagi to get the Predator Eye, but on a technical scale. Does he have the ability to use it? If we talk about his football IQ, the cool-headedness to find new shot courses and general vision, then yes. But when it comes to pure shooting, currently he doesn't have the capabilities to. At least, not fully. First we have to see, can direct shots work with the Predator Eye? As we saw earlier with the Manshine missed goal, while the ball was coming to Isagi, he still had the time to look for a new shot course when Kaiser blocked it. In general, Isagi is able to instantly feel the way the ball will be moving thanks to his insane kinetic vision, and so can then focus on finding a shot course that beats all of the defenders thanks to the time he doesn't spend trying to calculate the ball's trajectory. And we have seen one instance when direct shots and Predator Eye were fully used, Barrow's first goal in the Ubers match. As we see, while Sendo and Nico are passing, Barou is looking at Gogamaru to wait for a weakness from him, and the moment he finds it is when the ball is coming from Sendo's pass. Here Barou basically shot the ball without trapping it, and so showed us how direct shots and the Predator Eye can be used, but there is one thing that we need to take into account. The fact that Barou had the capability to do a curved shot that went past all of the people in front of him, something Isagi currently lacks. Or does he? Let's go back way earlier in the manga, chapter 83. What do we see in this chapter? Isagi doing a similar play to Barou's. Here the ball was trapped by Nagi and passed to Isagi. While Isagi was coming near the ball, he had the time to fully focus on the goalkeeper and find a shot course. And what happened when he eventually shot? He went for a curved shot that went past all of the people in front of him and would have even been a goal had Rin not been there. So here the big difference between Barou and Isagi's shot is that they didn't aim for the same thing. Barou aimed for a weakness in the goalie's awareness, meanwhile Isagi aimed for a shot course that the goalkeeper couldn't reach. But the execution of it was basically the same. Another really interesting thing is that Isagi's shot was the highlight of his match. As we see in chapter 86, Isagi's biggest play that was even compared to Nagi's two-stage fake volley was this exact curved shot, instead of the back heel shot that he beat Rin with. So it does seem that it's something he will develop later on in the story, and him awakening this type of shot once again with the help of the thinking brought by the use of Predator Eye would be a perfect moment for Isagi to realize that at higher level he will need to curve his shots to be able to beat defenders in front of him, and that the way he's currently shooting is a big limitation of his. Now, if you're an Isagi enjoyer like me, this may ring a bell or two to one of his biggest awakening. The moment he discovered egocentrism in the Menshine match, and even the moment he discovered the direct shots in the first selection. What do I mean by that? Well, Isagi was forced to face parts of himself that seemed rational and normal to him, but were actually really flawed. With egocentrism, he had to face the fact that his story wasn't the only one in the world, and that the people around him weren't just secondary characters in their lives. And with his direct shot, he had to recreate the concept of shooting to a whole new level. Which leads us to our last point: how can Isagi awaken the Predator Eye? Well, let's compare the situation to the first selection. In terms of general structure, the Nail and the first selection are pretty similar, from the structure of the league to the general themes. We have of course the fact that the teams are born from one individual striker who turns 0 into 1, which was the whole point of Kaiser's introduction to us, but also the fact that the two arcs are related to developing weapons and ego. Whereas the first selection was about discovering your weapons and ego, the Nail is about refining your weapon and structuring your ego to make it work with the reality of the field. This general theme deserves its own video, but the most important part is that similarly to the first selection, Isagi failed as a striker in his first game and was the last one to discover his weapon. For the first selection, he developed his spatial awareness to move around the field, and for the Nail he discovered metavision. But once again, those weapons weren't enough for him to work as a striker. And when the stakes were at the highest, in the final moment after someone who understood his playmaking passed to him, he had one final face-off that he had to surpass through his ego and willpower to gain his worth as a striker. The answer he came to at that time was the direct shot. Here we are getting a similar development with Isagi. He's thinking that he has all the pieces to score in terms of playmaking, with Hiyori being a sort of parallel to Bachira, and the stakes being at the highest, as he will lose his place in the regulars of Bastard Mushin and his bet with Kaiser if he loses here. His final chance to prove himself as a striker is right now. And similarly to his first face-off against Barou, where Barou first passed him and through that managed to make Team X his, Barou has done the same with Ubers. Though after that, Isagi also had to face Barou in a 1v1 to score but passed in the end. And so Isagi potentially having a final matchup in the Ubers match against Barou, he may be able to score this time and have Barou take back what he said in the first selection when Isagi passed instead of scoring. The fact that Isagi was talentless as a striker. So I see the awakening of Predator Eye from Isagi as a sort of callback to both his encounter with Barou and also his final face-off against Nagi in the first selection. As after all, both aimed to devour the light that Isagi was trying to create on the field. And with all that said, the video is finally finished. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, tell me so in the comments. Always up to take some feedback. If you want to talk about the newest chapters or also ask me some questions, don't hesitate to give a visit to the Discord server of the channel, where I regularly analyze the manga along with the rest of the community. And with all that said, have a great one, fellow egoists.